Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Let me see. Yes, I'm going to try to get my ear pods working. I was on the wrong date.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's so good to
Good.
chat.
So good to chat with you. Are you still in Florida?
No, I left.
Oh man,
I'm
I'm
back.
sorry.
I know. I'm back in Kentucky, living it up.
Good. Well, it is so great to connect in this way, and I'm so excited about this conversation
Yeah.
because, I know we've been kind of chatting all things, business and some nutrition and working together for a while now, but I
Yeah.
think, this is the first time that I can kind of sit down and pick your brain and
I
hear all about
know.
you and your philosophy and your work. So I am so excited.
Yay. Yeah, me too. How's Richmond?
Oh, it's good. It's hot. I'm sure it
Yeah.
is in Kentucky too.
Yeah. It's
But I feel
actually
like,
kind of nice this week. We've had some pretty good weather, so I will take it.
yes, I know anything that you can in the dog days of summer.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I am excited to just jump right in and kind of, for anyone who's listening or watching that don't know about you and what you do, why don't you catch us up on your background and how you kind of got to where you are today?
Yeah. Okay. Well, my name is Amanda Nighbert. I'm a registered dietitian with a passion for health and wellness. And I actually worked in a hospital clinical setting for nearly 16 years. And then in 2017, I kind of branched out into this online space, kind of launching my virtual health and wellness practice. And everything evolved. And really, my most popular service is my lean program, Living Energized and Nourished. So I try to help people, create nutritional awareness around the foods that they're eating and, reach weight loss and health goals.
That's awesome. And kind of just, I think what's interesting of your background is that you did work in that clinical setting. And just knowing you and kind of your energy and light that you put out there and just the type of stuff that you're encourage in your message. Um, and I could be misinformed about kind of the hospital setting, but I did like when I started my own journey with nutrition, I thought that in order to do this work, you had to have an RD behind your name, which I mean, obviously there is definitely something to that, but you know, I started to look into that traditional path of getting a dietetics degree and realized very quickly on in the type of path that they kind of have you do that wasn't necessarily, that didn't align with me and the type of information that I wanted to put out into this world. I mean, I'm a holistic health coach, and so, definitely not a registered dietitian. I feel as if to be a coach though, you could, it's a little bit of a different work you do with clients. So that aligned with me a lot more. But how is the difference between kind of working in that setting? I mean, obviously now you're your own boss, right? But
Right.
how do you feel as if the work that you do now differs from what you did in that more traditional setting?
I love that question because you're right. Traditional nutritional information is so dated and it's still
Hmm.
dated.
Yeah.
You will see registered dietitians, which are the authority in the nutritional space, still giving out very dated information. And I would always call myself the renegade dietitian because I was the one telling people to eat organic butter while all the other dietitians were telling people to eat spray butter. And I was the one telling them that, eggs are not bad for you. And,
Yeah.
but maybe oatmeal is not the best choice first thing in the morning, loaded with cinnamon and sugar.
Right.
So I really kind of bucked the system really early on. And it was my own experience with a health condition. Basically, about 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with high cholesterol. And at the time, I was following a low fat, low calorie diet. I was
Yep.
exercising. I was of a healthy weight. But my cholesterol was over 300 and my doctor wanted to put me on a statin. And I was like, heck no, I'm not taking a pill for
Right.
the rest of my life. Give me 6 months to kind of change this on my own. And of course, she hands me the American Heart Association diet, which was exactly how I was eating. And I left there going, okay, well, something's up. And I read a book called The Cholesterol Myth, and it basically said cholesterol is a symptom of inflammation in the body. And sugar and carbohydrates are driving inflammation the most. And so actually, in order to improve your cholesterol, you probably need to eat more butter and eggs and eat less, bagels and oatmeal. And so I did. I made a radical shift with the foods that I was eating. I started incorporating more healthy fats into my diet. I started limiting carbs and sugars. And 6 months later, my cholesterol was normal. And,
Wow.
I went into my doctor and she's like, wow, what did you do? And I said, I did the exact opposite of what you told me to do. And it was really at that moment that I laughed and said, I can't keep teaching this, dated information to my own patients when I know for myself it's not correct. So that was really a big shift for me. And it's hard to get people out of that fat phobia mindset and recognizing that, it's, and definitely, from your space, it's more about food quality than sometimes quantity, can make a huge impact. So yeah, I mean, I think that, I think the gig is up. We recognize that what we are teaching young dietitians and what, we're teaching people with regards to diabetes management and heart disease and, all of that stuff is just flawed, and we've got to make a shift.
Yeah, and that's so good to hear that, because I remember a couple years ago, I read a book. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's Primal Body, Primal Mind, and I'm going to botch the author's last name. But I read about cholesterol and about how it's actually termed the duct tape of human health and is actually a healing substance. So it was debunking everything that for 4 decades has been persisting in our society and culture from a nutritional standpoint. And I just remember thinking, and this book and this philosophy really went into my coaching and my online class about the beauty of blood sugar balance, and was really a springboard to creating Gratisfied and wanting to make that change and debunk the myth of healthy fat and a bigger platform. But what is it? I just remember being this 30-something girl who had no medical degree and being like, how do I know this? But that the people out there that are dietitians and doctors are still stuck in this archaic way of thinking. What needs to change in order for this to become more of the norm, I guess?
Yeah, well, so I don't know if you've ever seen, but it takes 17 years for something to be implemented into the healthcare system. So if they find, if we've determined that, okay, now the treatment for heart disease is not fat control, that it's, blood sugar control, it's going to take 17 years for that to be indoctrinated into medical school and physician training and things like that. So there's this huge gap between what we know we should be doing and actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue is it's very political. And if you look at the organizations that are driving these types of nutritional recommendations, they're so deep into big food pockets that, they're scared to make the shift because it's going to piss off, big corporations like General Mills and, Kellogg's and things like that. So, they have to toe the line between it's just something like the American Heart Association. They're going to be really cautious about, what they're putting out because of the people that are supporting and funding them. And so that's where you kind of see the shift. And that's where it's really been this kind of grassroots campaign really over the last 10 years to see this kind of shift around, again, just quality and versus, quantity.
Yes. Well, you just kind of gave me a little bit of another fire under my feet. I'm going to become that brand that actually funds the people trying to make the positive change in the world. So you just
Absolutely.
watch me.
Yeah. And I definitely think that, obviously you're in that space. Well, I'm not in that space. So, but I can imagine that when you go to trade shows or something, you see tons of companies that have the same type of ethics that you do. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
We need to make healthy food cheap and accessible.
Right.
And we need to stop making healthy food more expensive than, junk food. And the reason why junk food is so cheap is because of, basically government subsidies. We pay farmers to, grow soy, wheat, and corn. And so it's really cheap to make bread and potato chips and crackers. And unfortunately, that's when you come down to, your economical status. And sometimes you don't have a choice to buy the broccoli and the apples because all you can afford is the bread and the peanut butter.
Right. And, I want to kind of get into the nitty gritty of your nutritional philosophy a little bit. And I think that offers a really good segue, because if you kind of think about, the standard American diet and how we got to where we are with all of the low fat, high sugar, high carb, and you kind of think about that archaic food pyramid, right, that persisted for 3 to 4 decades. I would be curious to know. So I know that, you with your lean program and intermittent fasting and macro management, all that, I want to get into that, but just kind of taking it back a notch, talking about food quality and carb quality. Like if you had to kind of design your own food pyramid, right? And like, I know now we've shifted to my plate in terms of the recommendations. And again, from my opinion, it's better, but it's not anywhere that it needs to be. What would your kind of pyramid or plate look like?
Well, I think that, I always say protein is the most polarizing food category that we deal with on a daily basis. And I think protein is very important for many reasons. But I think the one thing that we can all agree across the board is that we all need to be eating more vegetables. And so, when I think about educating my clients and even in my own lifestyle, I'm always looking for how can I maximize my vegetable intake. So my plate would be like, 50 to 75% vegetables, and then pretty much like everything else in moderation. I'm not a fan of being a vegan or, completely omitting animal protein. I think that there's a lot of value to incorporating that food group into your diet. I think it comes down to how you're sourcing it. There's a big difference between conventionally, captive raised, cows versus grass-fed, grass-finished cows. Even with regards to nutritional quality, they're not the same. So incorporating small amounts of animal protein on a daily basis, in addition to, healthy fats, those are really the big things that I think people need to kind of be focused on.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's why I always like to use the term plant forward. Like if you're just like primarily plant-based or plant forward, and then, kind of, and I'll be honest, I've played around with veganism in the past, and realized very quickly that it did not work for me. So I share your sentiment where I'm like, if I can just fill most of my meals with veggies and then a protein that works for my body, and I thrive on healthy fat. So I think it's really important for people to just kind of play around with it, knowing that sometimes I feel like the way I eat evolves and changes constantly. So it's just realizing that, to tune in meal to meal and day to day can, be a very powerful, practice for people figuring that out. So intermittent fasting and the buzzword of kind of keto, and I think that I've delved into the nutritional science and studies and research on ketosis and, fat burning versus carb burning or sugar burning, what have you. And so I think that when you use the word keto, it can kind of have this connotation of being another fad. But, you know, that's why I almost kind of like to think about it in terms of the nutritional science behind it. So for anyone who doesn't know too much about it or who's interested in playing around with it, can you kind of explain it a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, the ketogenic diet it's a very, medically sound nutritional approach. My lean program is not a ketogenic diet. Probably the biggest issue that I have with a ketogenic diet is just the sustainability of it.
Right.
I think people are really successful at doing it in the short run, but doing it in the long run is really hard. And doing keto every single day is not
Yeah.
beneficial. Like,
Right.
really, the most beneficial to incorporate a ketogenic diet is going to be to cycle. So you do like
Mm,
keto cycle. So you do, a couple of months with keto, and then you refeed with your carbohydrates, and then you go back in. That seems to be the most beneficial way to incorporate it. And that seems to be a little bit, in my opinion, more sustainable.
mhm.
Now, a lot of people get the ketogenic diet mixed up with a low carb diet, and they're very
Mm,
different.
okay.
So when you talk about low carb diets are obviously restrictive in carbohydrates,
Mhm.
but they tend to be high protein and high fat. So people tend to eat probably a lot more protein on a low carb diet than they do fat. Whereas a ketogenic diet is actually low carb, moderate to low protein,
Right.
very high fat, like
Mhm.
70% fat is going to be
Wow.
a ketogenic diet, 75% fat, 15 to 20% protein, and then 5% carbs. So a lot of people will think they're doing a ketogenic diet and not see the same benefits, medically or weight loss, because in reality, they're really doing a low carb diet. So I think it's important to differentiate between the two, because they are
Mhm.
very different.
And that protein difference, just based on my research, I mean, you have to take gluconeogenesis into account, correct? And that's your body's natural ability to turn excess protein into sugar, right? So I
Yep.
think that people just don't understand that. They think that they can just like eat all this protein. I think that's where like people, the whole Atkins thing, you know, a couple decades ago, got it all wrong, confused, whatever. But they weren't taking that biological process into account,
You,
correct?
right. You can't get into ketosis if
Hmm.
you're eating too much protein.
Hmm. Yeah, and I always like to tell people, you know, because as a health coach, I did get a lot of questions about keto because when I was coaching, it was kind of this new thing that was coming
Mhm.
onto the scene. And I always I said the same thing. For a sustainable way of eating, I think it's very difficult. But for someone who might be dealing with some metabolic issues like insulin resistance or prediabetes, it can be a useful tool, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think it's a great, it's a good momentum, and I think that when you implement a ketogenic diet, you're very limited on the amount of processed foods you can eat. So it does kind of set you in the momentum to be more focused on whole food nutrition.
Hmm.
And both of those together are in the long run going to create, visible results. Here's the issue is that if you don't understand how to transition from the ketogenic diet to a more balanced
Right.
approach. We live in such a society that is like all or nothing. Everybody goes all in January 1st on this
Mm,
very restrictive eating approach. And then maybe they reach their goal, or maybe they just, fizzle out. And versus going to something a little bit more balanced, they go back to eating like crap, and
mhm.
that essentially creates issues.
So, what would be, and I'm sure you talk about this all the time to the participants of your program, but what are some kind of tips that you um, give the people in your program to sort of maintain and sustain a more balanced way of eating?
So one of the things that we do first and foremost in lean is nutritional awareness with macro management.
Hmm.
There's a big push right now for this intuitive eating movement, and I am all for that. I am very much an intuitive eater, but
Hmm.
I feel like I can be successful at in intuitive eating because I have such great nutritional awareness. I
Yes.
can pretty much look at any food and I understand the macronutrient breakdown of that food without seeing a label or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really the foundation of, you know, creating that nutritional awareness. So my clients actually track all the food that they eat. And I think just the ability of tracking your food helps you to see where your diet is deficient. Am I getting enough protein? Am I getting too many carbs? You know, where do things lie? What does my favorite caramel macchiato equate to? You know, how do my chips and salsa margaritas on Friday night equal out? You know, again, and then ultimately, you know, the next time you go to have maybe a donut or a slice of pizza, you evaluate that decision in a different way. Yes, I'm going to have one donut because, you know, I'm good, versus I'm not going to have 6 like I would have, type of thing. So that's where we typically start, is with that nutritional awareness. And then kind of build on that with regards to that kind of macro management. You know, back in the 70s and 80s, it was all about calories in versus calories out.
Right.
And we know that that's not necessarily the case. You know, all calories are not created equal. And so recognizing more so that macronutrient breakdown, which are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, just again creates much better long-term results in the way you feel and your weight loss than just focusing on calories.
Yes. And I love that. And, you know, and I think what you're saying is that, especially in your program, you learn to track, but that doesn't mean you're going to be tracking forever. It's just about kind of learning how a certain food affects your particular body. So like you said, you could get to where you are at a certain point and know that you don't even really have to think about it. You just kind of intuitively know. And I think that's what's really missing in our society, and especially with food, is people's just disconnection from their body. Right.
Yeah.
And
right. Yeah. And all this false advertisement, you know, I mean, just because it says healthy, just because it says whole grain, you know, just because it says low fat, low sugar, doesn't mean it's good for you. And so, you know, people are just kind of like confused, really. And so once you break it down, then it's very easy to see, well, this is good and this is bad. Because, you know, I actually work with a lot of women who will come to me and say, Amanda, I eat clean, I eat organic, I eat healthy, you know, I don't drink, I exercise, but I still carry, you know, this fluff that I can't get rid of. And my response is, well, healthy food adds up, you know? So at the end of the day, you may be making really good quality food choices, but you're not getting enough protein. You're getting way too many grams of sugar, you know? So again, it's all about creating that nutritional awareness.
Yeah. And yeah, I remember there was a time where I thought I was eating really healthy. And I think what people don't understand as much is it can be about how you eat as well as what you eat, in terms of, you know, whether you're eating really stressed out or you're eating in a hurried mindset, or, you know, so you're not paying attention to those hunger cues so that you don't stop when you're full. And also just kind of the fact that you can your blood sugar can become mismanaged due to how much you eat, not only like what it is you're eating, correct?
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you know, really when we look back, in 1977 is when the food guide pyramid came out. And really at the same exact time is when that whole notion of 6 small meals a day came about. Where, you know, the theory, because it was all, you know, the whole low fat was all theory, you know, based on really bad science, very little bad science. And the same thing with this whole like 6 small meals a day. I mean, prior to that, there was no snack category. It didn't exist. You know, we ate breakfast at 8 a.m., we had lunch at 12, and we had dinner at 5:30, and we were done. You know, I remember coming home from high school, and I'm 43, asking my mom for a snack, and she'd say, no, you're going to ruin your dinner. And we don't understand why our kids won't sit down to chicken and broccoli at 6 o'clock. Well, you just fed them a bowl of goldfish at 5. You know, so this whole kind of notion of like eating every 2 to 3 hours is really set us up for big trouble. And it all comes down to that insulin response,
Yes.
you know, that time restricted eating for, you know, basically our almost entire existence, except for the past 4 or 5 decades. We've been fasting, stopping dinner and breaking our fast, breakfast, for 12 to 14 hours without even calling it, you know, intermittent fasting. And then the whole 6 small meals a day came about. Then we started eating breakfast at 6 and we're chomping on ice cream at 10 p.m. And now our eating window is not 12 to 10 hours. Our eating window is now 14 to 16 hours. And it's that constant rise in insulin all day long that's inhibit our ability to break down stored fat. And so the reason why we're hearing so much about intermittent fasting right now is because 2016, the Nobel Peace Prize was won for the discovery of autophagy, which is the cleansing of the body of dead, damaged, dysfunctional cells from the inside out. And so it was at that moment where we realized, wow, not eating is actually very beneficial. You know, there's a lot of benefit in not eating, which we've been kind of drilled over the past 4 or 5 decades that not eating is the worst thing you can do.
Right. So can it work both ways with intermittent fasting? So for example, like even, so just making sure that that eating window kind of stays the same amount of hours. So let's say that someone's eating window is 10 to 6, or could it work like someone's window is like 12 to 8, or would you more advise of stop eating earlier versus stop eating later, but then just extend breakfast the next day? Can it work both ways?
It definitely can. I mean, at the end of the day, the benefit is in the intermittent fasting. The benefit is in the fasting window, regardless of where the window is. You know, I mean, if you're out having cocktails at 11 o'clock at night and you want to capture, you know, that 12-hour fast, then you don't eat until 11 o'clock the next day. Or if you want to capture that 14-hour fast, you don't eat till 1 o'clock the next day. Probably the most beneficial fasting cycle is with the sun. And that's just because we evolved to, you know, go to bed when it was dark out and wake up when the sun came up. So the circadian rhythm fasting is probably going to be the most beneficial. But a lot of people struggle with that, especially like in the summertime, you know, or the winter time when it gets dark much quicker. So, you know, there's a lot of flexibility, and that's what I love about intermittent fasting is because every single person should be fasting for 12 hours, period. And that shouldn't feel overwhelming, you know? I mean, we should be able to stop eating at 8 o'clock and have breakfast at 8 a.m. But we know that there's additional benefits if we go 14 hours, if we go 16 hours. You know, in my program, we practice a 16-8 fast because I feel like the sweet spot for fat metabolism is in those last 2 hours, hours 14, 15, and 16. So the ability to tap into your fat stores on a daily basis is accomplished with a 16-hour fast. So, but if you want to eat breakfast every Saturday and Sunday with your family, go for it. You know, if you want to go out on Friday night and hang out with your friends and eat late and you don't want to push your fast the next day, not a big deal. So I think it's just such an easy strategy to implement and see amazing results.
So what about coffee? Does that break your fast in the morning? Because
yeah. Okay. So
I'm sure you get that question a lot.
Oh Lordy, yes. People got to have their coffee. I might still be drinking my coffee. So the cleanest way to fast, you know, is water, unsweet tea with nothing in it, and black coffee. You know, that's probably the purest form of fasting. Now, most people are like, oh, you lost me at black coffee because I ain't drinking black coffee. So in the lean program, we do allow clients to incorporate up to 40 calories every 3 to 4 hours. So if they wanted to add a little cream to their coffee or, you know, a little stevia or something like that, as long as it's 40 calories or less, most likely there's going to be very little to no insulin response. And that's really the key for fasting. As soon as there's an insulin response, then you basically have broken that fast cycle. So there is, like, for example, some of my clients use the fat coffee. So we use like the bulletproof coffee with the grass-fed butter and the high quality MCT oil. And because, even though it's 250 calories, because there are 0 grams of protein and 0 grams of fat, you have 0 insulin response. And I've actually tested it myself with a glucometer. So yeah, so that kind of goes back into that kind of keto fasting.
Right. So I want to kind of start to wrap things up and just hear a little bit more about your program and how it works. And, you know, I'm sure that you have coaching calls or recipes and you explain all the science behind blood sugar and insulin and metabolism and all that. So if someone was interested in learning more all about this, how does that work?
Yeah, so Lean Living Energized and Nourished, it's a 7-week program, obviously run by me, a registered dietitian. And I think what you get the most out of it is just such high level education and support. You know, we really break down the science and we try to make it as simple as possible because it can feel overwhelming. And I try to show you why this, you know, why this is dated and why this is, you know, the way it should be and moving forward. And then I try to teach you really easy and simple ways to implement it into your life with your busy schedule, your picky kids, your need for wine once a week, your need to eat out. You know, it really has to be a lifestyle. One of the things that I say is whatever you do to lose the weight, you better be prepared to do to keep it off. So if you incorporate or implement something that doesn't feel authentic or sustainable in your lifestyle, if you lose weight, you're probably going to gain it back. So we really focus on strategies that feel, you know, authentic to you. Time restricted eating, intermittent fasting, nutritional awareness with macro management. We incorporate carb cycling to give you kind of the best of both worlds, where we do a couple of low carb days with regular carb days, whole food nutrition. And here's the thing, I think sometimes people feel overwhelmed with eating healthy, you know, but like in my house, taco night is healthy. You know, we load up on the veggies, we have grass-fed beef, you know, I make a salad with beans and rice and you know, whatever. So I really try to show you that probably most likely the meals that you're already cooking, we can make a couple of tweaks and make them even more healthy and good for the whole family. So
to healthify them.
Yes, exactly. So it's all run through my free private app. So no social media needed. So cool. And I think the last thing that really sets it apart is the daily support and accountability. So myself, my team are interacting with my clients every single day, answering your questions, tweaking your macros, sending you recipes. We have a 6-week meal plan and just helping you stay on track. Like if I don't hear from you for 3 or 4 days, you're going to get an email me, you know, are you doing good? Are you doing bad? Do you need help? So it really creates that kind of community and just support that you need as you're kind of getting started on this health journey.
I love that. What do you find is kind of the one thing that comes to mind that someone needs support in the most? Like what is the one question that you always keep on hearing or the one problem that you need to help women solve?
Well, definitely when it comes to women, it's like healthy food fast, you know, and feeding the family, getting everybody, you know, eating the same thing in a healthy way. I think women kind of struggle with that, but I think they ultimately overthink it, you know? So I try to keep it really as simple as possible.
Yes, I know. I think it's the mindset is such a big piece to all of it. And so, you know, that can be kind of the game changer.
Yeah. Getting out of that all or nothing mindset, you know, because people are honestly, they're either 100% on or 100% off, and you can't live a healthy lifestyle like in a sustainable way if you're constantly on and off.
All right, so my last question for you, which is just a little bit of a random trivia because I love hearing about people's morning routines. What is your morning routine?
So I typically get up and the first thing I do is make coffee, and I drink a little bit of black coffee. And I typically get my workout in kind of first thing in the morning pretty early. I'm at the gym, maybe about 6:30, knock that out and then come home, kind of get ready for the day. And I like to sit down kind of first thing in the morning and, you know, think about what I have going on, look through that. If it's a really good day, I'll try to do a little bit of meditation and affirmations. But yeah, kind of get the body moving and things rolling kind of early.
Yes. Well, Amanda, you are just, an inspiration and a wealth of knowledge in the wellness space. So if people are just interested in learning more about you, where can they find you? Website, Instagram, all the good stuff.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram, Amanda Nighbert RD. It's Nighbert, because I put it all out there. I try to
You're
share
very real and refreshing.
Yes. And, I don't really hide any of the strategies that I teach my clients. I want you to know those strategies and implement them on your own if that's what you need to do. So I feel like it's a really good resource. But to find out more information about my programs, check out my website, which is amandanighbert.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was so fun. And, I, of course, always learn a lot from you, and I know that others do as well. So appreciate you taking the time to chat. And I know we will reconnect on the interwebs very soon.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Have such a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.